What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video from Pink Tourmaline. And today we are covering somebody that I stumbled across last night named Elizabeth April. And she is a remote viewer. Here's a little bio that I generated for you guys. So if you're unfamiliar with her, I think you should check her out. I'm very blown away by this interview that I'm about to show some little excerpts, and we're going to talk about each of these little segments. I've kind of sectioned off little excerpts that I thought were particularly interesting, at least to me. Elizabeth April is a spiritual creator, intuitive, and self-described remote viewer channeler known for her content about consciousness, starseeds, extraterrestrial content, the Galactic Federation, astral travel, and spiritual awakening. Unlike military-style controlled remote viewers, her work blends intuitive remote viewing with channeling, psychic perception, and new age cosmology. So that's a lot right there. But at least in this interview, and I think this interviewer does such a great job of asking really, really great questions, especially for people who are unfamiliar with Elizabeth April. This guy's from the Align podcast. And by the way, I'm going to post a link to the full interview in the description, so you can check out the interview in its entirety. But I feel like he does such a great job of asking just fun, interesting questions to Elizabeth, because again, we talk about the idea of Gnosis, direct knowledge. This is why I'm so fascinated right now by remote viewing, out-of-body experiences, astral projection, is to get a lot of these answers firsthand. Now, that being said, we can't say that everything I think we witness outside of the body or via these other mechanisms are 100% reliable every single time. And I'm going to explain why even as we go through this interview, but I think we have to be mindful of, well, first of all, there's different narratives that seem to come from these. So how are they not all aligning if it's perfect truth, right? Number one. Number two, I think the reason why maybe potentially all these downloads don't intersect is because perhaps there's some sort of manipulation going on, or perhaps there's some error rate that's happening. And she even talks about that, those error rates or those misses that do occasionally happen with these protocols. So it's a very interesting way that we can't say is 100% certain, but it's a very interesting way to go about answering these big questions: why we're here, what's really going on, what's the purpose of life, where should we be aiming to go to at the end of our lives. And this just seems like a great means and mechanism by which to get those answers. Okay, now, without further ado, let's get into the mix. I just instantly become a big fan of Elizabeth April. She does not mince words. She just tells it straight. And this gentleman at the Align podcast, can't remember his name, but the way he interviews, I think is really phenomenal. So I thought I'd start off with a little introduction to how remote viewing works, because I'm still learning the intricacies of exactly how it works. I actually learned more in this video from her, as well as looking up some other material. So I'm going to let her explain the process of remote viewing, as well as her experience training to be a remote viewer. And then I'll fill in some details as well after these two clips. So first, in Elizabeth's own words, check this out.
And essentially, they would give you a blind target. So the target would consist of 8 numbers, just random numbers, not longitude, latitude. And those coordinates are linked to a location, a place, a time. Now, what's really cool about remote viewing is it can be any place and any time, either on or off planet Earth, in the past, in history, and so on and so forth. So it's really not restricted to the present moment.
Okay. Now you might be wondering, wait a minute, how do these numbers work? What are these random numbers? If they're completely random and they're not related to any coordinates, how do they work? I'm going to get to that in a moment. But first, let me finish her. Actually, let me jump ahead right to it. Hold on. I'll do that right now. Okay. So what are the significance of those numbers? So here's the gist of it. Remote viewers generally follow a strictly controlled scientific protocols to ensure there's no possibility of cheating, or also just contamination of making yourself see something that you're not really seeing potentially. So this involves viewing a target that is identified only by numerical code. The code might refer to Sydney Harbor Bridge, but the remote viewer will not know that. They will just be told the location 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So how does the thought form know where to go? So how does she know from these random numbers where to go? This is the key right here. The person who devises the remote viewing test chooses a numerical code to represent the target they have in mind. So the two are mentally connected. So you see, somebody who writes the code has the target in mind. They don't say anything about the target. The numbers have no relation, but it's just the fact that they have it in their mind. I guess it creates some sort of consciousness connection or quantum connection between the two. And that's how it's able to direct their mind to this particular place and time. The information that links the numerical code to the target is vibrationally embedded into the numerical code. All this occurs subconsciously and automatically. When the remote viewer sees the code, their subconscious mind simply reads the embedded location and knows where to go. That's so wild. That's so wild. It's probably impossible for some people to even believe because, we haven't learned anything like this in mainstream science. But obviously, I've heard so many people talk about remote viewing for so long that this isn't that hard for me to believe. And obviously, there's now even been government disclosure that there have been these operational remote viewing programs. So to me, it's not jarring anymore, but it may be for folks who are coming across this for the first time. Anyways, super, super cool. Now let's get back here to remote viewing, how it works, part 2.
And out of the entire training program, out of 20 targets that I have been given, I've been 20 for 20. So I've actually never been off target.
So that's an interesting point. I just want to say she was 20 for 20, but obviously that opens up the idea or the possibility that people could be off, right? They're taking this. She's talking about a testing protocol where they're given 20 targets. And so maybe you have to have a certain percentage accuracy to pass the program. My point in highlighting this, yes, she went 20 for 20. That's amazing. But there must be some known error rate or rough error rate per person. It must vary based on different circumstances. But all of this just to say that, and it just sucks because there's another layer of inaccuracies embedded within these protocols. But we have to take a lot of the remote viewing information with a grain of salt, maybe based on the person who's doing it, perhaps, that there could be an error rate.
Which is pretty impressive. Yeah.
What are the targets? It's eight digits in a geographical location that you're not aware of?
Yeah, exactly. All you get is
20
8
for
digits.
20?
And I'm 20 for 20.
All right.
Yeah. So you could put me into a blank room, right? With no doors, no windows, nothing, right? No stimulation. Give me 8 digits that's linked to a location throughout space and time. And I'm able to tune into that and basically see the location. Not only can I see it, I can see buildings, I can go inside buildings, I can smell the air. Like, it's pretty wild what you can do with remote viewing. So suffice to say, my natural abilities did translate over to a more CIA level sort of scientific remote view.
Could you do that with me here? Like, what would it take for me to write down 8 digits here and for you to be able to, I mean, I presume we don't have enough time to do that in a podcast, but like, what's the process?
It takes a while. Yeah. So it was about 2 to 3 hours per location, right? To get sort of the finished result. So it does take quite a while to do the method and tap in.
What does tapping in look like? What is your process?
Well, I mean, it really depends, right? So for me, as far as me teaching myself, I have to get into a state of something called equanimity. Equanimity is a state where you are aware of all sensation without reaction. All right. So that means your stomach is gurgling because you're hungry. You're aware of that sensation, but you're not reacting to it. And all of a sudden that sensation goes away. There's a chill in the room. You're aware of it, but you're not distracted by it. And then, it's like tuning out your focus of every aspect of this reality to get yourself into a 0 point state or a neutral state. Once you're in that neutral state, you're in a space where everything exists and nothing exists simultaneously. Once you're in that place, you can then input your own coordinates. So for me, when I don't have the digits and a teacher sort of guiding me to a location, I just input my own coordinates. So if I want to go to an underground military base, I get to that space of 0 point and I can go anywhere I want to go, both on and off planet.
It's really cool. So when she talks about this concept of equanimity, I had never heard this word before. This is brand new to me. And as I've mentioned a couple times on this channel, I've been trying to have an OBE for like about a month. I've been trying every day based on William Bowman's protocols that I read in Adventures Beyond the Body, to no avail. But some interesting things have been happening, but nothing to where it's actually happened. And it's funny. I was aware that you need this this ability to tune things out, because I just intuitively knew, or I felt that when I'd feel a little itch in the middle of the beginning the protocol, and I'd like, oh, go scratch. I'm like, I know I shouldn't be doing that, or I shouldn't be responding, but oh, the itch is bothering me, so I'm gonna go scratch my leg or whatever it might be. So I had this intuition that I need to be tuning that stuff out, or as she's saying, acknowledge it, but don't react to it. And now she just laid it out so perfectly. And that was really cool for me. That was a big epiphany when I heard her say that. Said, okay, well, this is something that I probably need to work on. And granted, I know she's talking about remote viewing, not out of body experiences, but I imagine this concept of equanimity applies in both places. I pulled up another clip that is from later in the interview where she talks about barriers to equanimity. So if you guys are also trying any of these things, this is a relevant excerpt.
What would be the biggest barrier blocking someone from arriving in a state of equanimity?
Distraction. Every single thing in this world is distracting us. And the second that we're not distracted and we're bored, we're uncomfortable, because no one wants to be uncomfortable. No one wants to sit with themselves. No one wants to feel their body. No one wants to feel lonely or their emotions that they haven't dealt with. You have to peel back every single layer of who you are to realize that you're none of it, to be able to get to a place where you can experience all of it. And that's a long process to go through. And not a lot of people are willing to put in the work, but everyone can do it.
Boom. I love that last part. Everybody can do it. I believe that. I believe I can do it. Like I when I hear a lot of people say that we can all do it. You don't have to be. I think maybe she is particularly gifted. She was able to do this since a young age. Okay. Obviously I and probably most of us don't fall in that category, but I still believe that. And that's it. That's there's no two ways about it. I believe it. And I think that's a great positive message. But there it is. Her tips on equanimity. Super cool. Okay. Now we get into the really crazy stuff here. Okay. So I already talked about the significance of the numbers. Now here are all of these really fun questions that through her remote viewing journeys, where she can go to a specific time and location and view whatever she would like to view. Here are some of the revelations and the things that she's seen. And by the way, when I talk about the inaccuracies that could be present potentially in anybody's remote views, I by no means am trying to imply that there is any deception being employed here. Far from it. In fact, I sense a very genuine, authentic person that is relaying exactly what she has seen and witnessed. What I'm saying is, when we have to add the grain of salt, the pinch of salt, is because perhaps there are outside or external forces manipulating these views. I'm just saying it's as a possibility. Again, we're told from David Icke and other folks, that Jason Georgiani, that NDEs are potentially manipulations, that they're being shown projections or images that aren't actually there to manipulate souls or ISBs as they come out of the body. So if that's happening, I could imagine it could also be potentially possible that these remote views are being manipulated in some way. And maybe that could account for some of the inaccuracies or variations in different views or different storylines that are presented from remote viewers. So just FYI. But anyways, let's get into the mix. Underground military bases. Check this out.
Scenes. And so some of the most surprising places I've ever been are these underground military bases, where not only are there rampant extraterrestrial presence there, but there are also other things that were quite surprising, like a cloning facility, multiple cloning facilities. There are huge underground bunkers, unfortunately, with a lot of human trafficking contained within it. There are railroad systems that are all underground, sort of connecting different states. There are, sort of these super soldier biological experiments that are happening in these underground.
So you might be like, what the heck is going on? That's insane. Well, for me, I mean, it's not really blowing my mind, because I've been into this type of material and learning about this type of stuff since way back in the day, since 2014. So it's not jarring to me, but it's just kind of cool that she has also seen this and experienced a lot of these things that I've heard many, many other people talk about and describe in terms of these underground military bases. So very interesting. Okay, now, who runs the world? I love that he just asked this question. Again, not jarring at all to me, because this is information that I came across a long time ago. And it's actually seemed very plausible to me out of all the myriad explanations of what's really going on between the political spheres and the business spheres and the banking world and all these different things. This narrative made a lot of sense when you look at all the chaos and the bizarre nature of a lot of the geopolitical conflicts that exist on the planet, and the number of wars and all these different things. It just does not seem to make a lot of sense as protocols that would benefit the masses at large. Just seems very, very weird. And also too, the structure of how things are presented, it just seems like clown world. And I think a lot of people are waking up to it. But anyway, so what's really going on? How are things really being run at the core of the planet? Elizabeth explains.
Is doing.
Who runs the world?
Great question. So it's definitely not any country. I mean, there's like layers to it, right? So we could say, oh yeah, it's the 13 bloodlines, right? These 13 sort of Rothschild type bloodlines, or the richest families of the world. Like they run everything, right? If we were to kind of pinpoint it and put a name to it, it's the people that we don't see on TV. It's the people that we don't see behind the podium. It's the people who are not the president, who absolutely run the world. I like to call them the shadow government, right? Because regardless of borders or countries, they're the ones who are ultimately in control of things.
There used to be actually amazing videos back in the day on YouTube when I was first getting into all this stuff that listed out the 13, these exact 13 families. And literally the only one I can remember right now are the Rothschilds, but they spanned across different nations. I remember that there were these different super wealthy or super elite families. Very specifically, she says 13. I remember exactly there were 13. I remember one was Italian. I can't remember the name. I can't remember the name of any of them, but all that content has been scraped from YouTube. And because I can't find any of it anymore. I remember there were all these crazy videos that you could find dealing with this type of content. And so much of it was removed. Again, I don't know why. I have my theories, but all right. So there we go. We get into the bloodlines, but she continues. They have a little break in the conversation. Now she continues and dives deeper on exactly these 13 families, but then who is behind, or who really are these 13 families?
That if you want names, right, I'd go to the 13 richest families, right? And so that would be like a solid list, right, to get started off with. But a lot of these individuals who do run things, like they're not in the public face, right? Like they don't have the names. Their photos are not on the internet. They don't have social media presence, and things like that. So they're essentially this organization. Some call them the Illuminati, which is sort of an organization within that organization. But if you want to go to the very top, if you want to actually talk about who they are, yeah, I do believe that they are giant reptilian beings who are running things. And I know it sounds absolutely crazy, but everything I've been talking about for over 10 years sound really crazy. And now it's all being quite validated in the Epstein files, right? So here we are today. Let's just get crazy because that's what I've seen. And when I first saw these reptile beings, I didn't know what to call them. I called them dinosaur beings for a long time, for quite a few years, because I didn't know they had a name. So that's what they look like to me. They look like humanoid dinosaurs.
Crazy, but also not that crazy. And this interview really hits a lot of these types of questions about what's the inner workings of the world, kind of the presence of ETs, these types of questions, which again are I think very interesting for a lot of people. These are questions that I've pondered and researched years and years ago. So still cool to hear it coming from somebody who's had firsthand experience via remote viewing. But again, I think now at this point in my journey, what I'm more interested in is not so much, maybe the two are, of course, I imagine intertwined is what I'm finding, but I'm not as interested necessarily in things happening covertly here. Or if I am, I'm interested in them to the extent that they affect what happens beyond this life, what happens after we pass on, with these ideas of, okay, well, is this control system also controlling the reincarnation loop? Our ISBs, our souls, once we leave the body, is that also part of the system? If it's not, then I'm not as interested in it. That, I'm interested in that other part. But she doesn't really get into this type of material or questions in this interview. She does mention at the end of this, the last slide I'm going to show you, her book, which I guess talks about the purpose of life, which I'm definitely going to read, but she doesn't go into it too much in this interview. So I just want to throw that out there real quick. Okay. Now he also asked, great question, where are the reptilians?
So the majority of the reptilians are underground. So they actually live in these underground tunnels. Sometimes they're more structured like underground cities. But yeah, mostly like just giant underground caves. Those are sort of the low-level reptilians. The high-level reptilians, or the high bloodline reptilians, are above ground, and they have both DNA and technology to shapeshift into human form. And so they've been doing that to essentially hide their true identity, once again, since the dawning of humanity, and to control us through being human, essentially. So, I mean, the thing is about the Epstein files, right? It's like, okay, great. So like we can all agree that these are horrific crimes against humanity that have been playing out under our noses this entire time. Okay, cool. And now who's doing this? And everyone's saying, oh, well, it's the elites. It's the people with the money. It's the 1%. Great. I can't wait for all of us to get to a point where we realize that the elites are actually non-human beings who have been essentially tarnishing humanity since the beginning.
It's so crazy. All this stuff has been talked about by David Icke for years. And you couldn't even probably talk about it publicly without people being like, what is going on? But now the Epstein files, the way those are coming out and validating, maybe not explicitly this information, but a lot of the other things that David Icke has been talking about, all the P word and all those rings and the crazy human trafficking and stuff. And again, that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's just so wild that all this stuff is coming out. And now we can actually kind of have this tangential validation of these theories that felt too bizarre to ever be real, too bizarre even for science fiction. And yet they're now being corroborated by multiple different people via multiple accounts. Obviously, again, Robert Monroe called them, I think, in his accounts, what's it called? In his out-of-body experiences, what do you call them? Crocodile people or something like that. So just this theme keeps coming up over and over. It's so crazy. And then he asked another great question, very simple, but a great question. Who are, like, again, I love his interview style. He just, boom, pops a nice little question in there and then she riffs.
So like, Justin Bieber is a shape-shifting reptilian, Kim Kardashian and the whole Kardashian clan, reptilians, Biden, Hillary Clinton and the Clintons are reptilians. Actually, a lot of like political newscasters that are reptilian. And so this is where a lot of the blood and sex rituals come from. This is where a lot of the drinking the blood and the adrenochrome come from, is because, once again, these aren't humans doing these crimes. These are an off-world race doing these crimes.
And I know that part, I think, for you guys and for me too, honestly, you hear that stuff, that part's a little hard to be like, Justin Bieber, really? Or the Kardashians? That's, I don't know. But again, I'm just trying to be open-minded, and I'm sure I imagine she's not just saying this in a random vacuum of like, hey, I think they are. And so they are. Like, I imagine she's gathered information from her remote viewing experiences, which we do still have to take with a grain of salt. But like, yeah, that just feels a little much for me. But I can't, what am I supposed to say? I've never remote viewed. I've never had an out-of-body experience, so I don't really know where to go with it. But I'm just pointing. I just thought it was an interesting clip, but I'm just pointing out, yeah, that might feel a little jarring to you, because it definitely it does to me, I'll admit. Okay, now this is a fun one. I've talked about the pyramids. I'm so fascinated by the pyramids, as I've mentioned, the way that they were built, the height of them, the size of the stone blocks, like none of it makes sense in terms of the mathematics and the physics of the dynastic Egyptian narrative of them creating it. But so she also has gone back and remote viewed the construction of the pyramids, and she gives a great account of how they were built, which is super cool, which does overlap with other accounts that I've heard of the types of technologies and the way that the stone blocks were cut and moved via levitation. So it's pretty cool.
Do you know who made the pyramids?
Yeah, I did. So they were engineered by extraterrestrials, mostly by the Anunnaki, from what I saw. There was a couple of different beings around at that time, and they used, how do I say this? Like gravitational technology. Like they were able to essentially like levitate things and then also like cut large stones with technology that, I mean, they didn't have to lift a finger, essentially. They had the technology to do all of that. It's quantum technology. Then we'll get there eventually.
Would it be like sound waves?
It could be sound waves. I'm not totally sure how they did that, but I just saw basically a device hovering over the pyramids, levitating giant blocks.
There it is. Pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. Okay. And now we're going to get to the final clip. And I wanted to present this as well because she talks about her book. She gives a couple other tidbits of insight, but she talks about her book. And in the book, she mentions that in the book, she covers the purpose of life. So I think that's going to be something that I'm going to buy and read specifically for that purpose, but I'm sure there's other great information in there.
Yep. And my first book is called You're Not Dying, You're Just Waking Up. Highly recommend it for anyone who is going through an ascension or awakening process. I talk about hybridization. I talk about your soul mission. I talk about the different extraterrestrials as well. I talk about the whole reason why we incarnate as a human being in general. So it's a good book to kind of kick off sort of the basic foundational knowledge of being a human.
What religion do you think is most accurate?
Buddhism.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
I thought that was cool too. So I just included that little tidbit. And the reason why it's especially cool is because the next book that I just brought up to my room to start reading, hopefully tonight, actually, I'll crack it open, is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I believe is a Buddhist book, actually. I haven't even cracked it open yet, but people have told me that is something a lot of people recommended for me to read that book throughout this exploration that I'm on, this path that I'm on. So yeah, thought that was pretty interesting. Thought that was pretty cool. And there it is, Elizabeth April. Let me know your thoughts in the comments of what you guys think about remote viewing overall as a methodology to extract information and learn and to get gnosis, direct knowledge. And also, what do you think about her interview and many of the things that she said? How do you find her? Do you find her, does your gut, your instinct, your intuition tell you that she's credible? Mine certainly tells me that she's credible, but I'd love to know your guys' thoughts. And man, I hope I can get this channel bigger because I'm even going to reach out to her regardless, even as small as this channel is right now. But I would love to just have conversations with people like this, just on a very regular basis, and just ask questions and learn and hear their perspective and try and piece together this crazy puzzle with the help of all these enlightened individuals. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.